What resources were helpful to you to prepare for the MMI?
So keep in mind that Shada and I were preparing for the online MMI. So really, I'll talk a little bit about resources first and then kind of how I went on to prepare for the MMI. I know people that actually didn't prepare and just went in cold. And I honestly don't know how they did that because I need to prepare. That's just my personality. So in terms of resources, I really went through a whole breadth of resources that were out there. Quite literally, I Googled practice MMI questions, and I had pages and pages and pages of different MMI questions that followed under the different categories of potential MMI questions that they might ask me. And I had a huge master doc. I'd find a question. I'd also find that certain pre-PA accounts or even just PA advocacy accounts also did share MMI resources. So I also looked onto that. So Instagram was a really great one there as well. I also looked up, this one is really great. So even though the person who created the content, the MMI that he was preparing for was the MD program in England, 𝗙𝗦𝗦𝗦𝗧𝗔𝗡, just a shout out to him. He has really great MMI videos on YouTube that I use. And I really loved his videos because they go about, what the different styles of questions are. So he has a different video for every style of question. And as well, he goes about how he went and answered questions and what a strong answer looked like versus what a not so strong answer would look like. So I really love that resource. That's the one that I'll really plug. And then in terms of preparation, the way that I went about preparing for the MMI. So I'm a very, very schedule-oriented person. So we had 4 weeks to prepare from the day that we got our interview offer to the day of our MMI. So the way that I broke it up was I broke it up into weeks. So my first week was all about research on anything that I think they could ask me, research about healthcare, research about PAs, research just about different things that I thought were pertinent to me. I even did research about COVID-19 because that's very prevalent. And it's very prevalent in healthcare. So that was really research oriented. And then at the time, we didn't actually know what our timing was for the questions, but the program did tell us, I believe, a week before how long we had to think and how long we had to answer. So you will have that information, but they don't give it to you right away. They gave it to us about 1 week before. So really what I did for weeks 2 and 3 was that's where I started to practice online etiquette and just started to learn how to formulate answers. So essentially, weeks 2 and 3, that was really just practice. So the practice that I had was 2 different ways. And the one thing I will say about practice before I talk about how I practiced was every time you go about practicing a question, you always want to put yourself in the exact setting or as close to the setting as possible that you will be in the actual MMI, because little psychology tidbit, you don't only remember things that you study or things that you look at, but you also remember your surrounding cues, in your room, just in your environment. So basically, when you go about practicing your MMI questions, always put yourself in the MMI setting. I always practice every MMI question in the room that I was going to do my interview in because it was online. So that was really great. I even went a little bit overboard and I even dressed the way that I would for my MMI. And I sat there really awkwardly in my blazer on FaceTime with my friends as they asked me questions. And I answered them to get comfortable being in professional attire. So then in weeks 2 and 3, I just went about practice. Whether I practiced with a friend, they would ask me a question, give me a set time. So they actually gave me various times. So, okay, you have 1 minute to think. Okay, this time you have 2 minutes to think. Okay, this time you have 5 minutes to answer. This time you have 10 minutes to answer. So that really stretched my scope of how I would go about answering questions and really prepared me for any time limits that they could give me. And then as well, I also practiced the online etiquette that Shada was talking about. So what I did was had a little smiley face sticker and I put it right beside my camera. So the one thing they really tell you is you want to make it as personal as possible, even though it's online. So I had that smiley face camera because there's a big difference when you're looking at your screen. So this is me looking at my screen versus when you're looking at the actual camera. It actually stimulates that you're making eye contact, that you're connecting with the person who's interviewing you. So that was really how I went about it. And then that 1 week right before the MMI, I took the day before the MMI off to just give myself a mind break, really de-stress. But that week before, what I did was I had the timings. I was like, okay, I called up my friends and I was like, let's run this through like it's a real MMI. So I did mock MMIs. I was like, okay, this is how many questions they're going to ask me. These are the timings. Let's practice. And I did in that week, I believe about 5 to 7 mock MMIs. The key with the number, I'm not saying that's how many mock MMIs you want to do, but for me, I was really being sure to be aware of, you know, how much energy did I have, because I didn't want to be burnt out the day of the interview and be all, my brain just be mush, but I also want to be prepared. So I picked a number that made me feel prepared enough, but also didn't exhaust me. And I also never did back-to-back mock MMIs. I was like, okay, I'll do one in the morning, one in the afternoon. I didn't just like do them back-to-back, just to give me that breather room. So that's really how I prepared for it.
So for me, I kind of, I use the 4 weeks very similarly to Toni. We did have the 4 weeks from the day we got the interview till the interview. And I was off school that month. I believe we received the invitation in April, and then the interview was beginning of May, I want to say. So undergrad was coming to a close, and I was also locked down. So I had nothing better to do. I don't know if I would have prepared as much if I did have school. I feel like I would have done it obviously a little bit differently. I didn't have, if I didn't have like 8+ hours in the day to just do MMI prep. But fortunately I did. And so I decided to take advantage of that timing. And so I started off the same way Toni did. I started off doing research. I had no idea what an MMI was when I received the invitation. I didn't know what to expect. And when I was watching the videos on YouTube, and I was so intimidated, I was like, how am I ever going to answer these questions about medical ethics? Like, what do I know? You know what I mean? Coming out of undergrad with my biomed degree, I was like, I don't know anything. So that's how I started, was looking at YouTube videos, watching other people answer the questions and kind of analyzing the way they structured their questions. So as much as I did research, medical ethics, the 4 pillars, and, the things that all of us PA advocates will talk about on Instagram, the most research that I actually did was how to actually structure my answers, because they can ask you any question. There's no way in the world that you're going to practice the same question that they're going to ask you, because there are so many different combinations of things that they could ask you. So what I wanted to do was solidify the way I would structure my answers so that I would never be thrown off by something that they would ask me. So for example, I would look into a lot of the ones that were kind of asking you for your opinion on something, or, where you stand on a certain issue. And I wanted to know how to structure my answer. So just using that as an example, you start off with your beginning opening line where you would kind of summarize what they were asking of you, and the question basically, and the prompt. And then you would go into talking about both sides, and then you would take one of those sides and support your answer. So when I had this kind of mock structure in my brain, I was able to apply it to each and every question and each and every prompt, and it just got easier and easier from there. So after my first week of struggling and watching these YouTube videos and being like, wow, this is so intimidating, I was, getting in the groove of things. And whether it be a more personal question about myself and my previous experiences, or whether it be about medical ethics and what I would do in this difficult situation, I was able to kind of think about the structure that I wanted, and whatever timing they would give me or whatever question they would give me, I would have a way to answer that. So that's my biggest advice in terms of people who are now preparing for the interview, is just have an idea of how you're going to structure your answers, and it will work no matter what they pull. No matter what questions you see, you will be able to understand how you're going to approach this question. And then you're never going to have one of those moments where you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't prep for this. Because you're not going to prep for it. That's not how it's going to work. In terms of other things that I did, I can talk about filming myself. That's something that I talk about all the time on my Instagram because I loved it. It worked so well for me. So I don't have the confidence that Toni does. I was not going to talk to my friends. Like, they were not going to see me do this MMI. No way. So I just decided to film myself and have myself watch the videos. Near the end, I did get my parents and rope some of my friends in to just really see if I was, seeing myself in the right light and like if I could improve on anything else. But I really started off super shy and timid, and so filming myself really worked. I would set my own timer. I would look at the prompt myself, and then I would give myself whatever X amount of time to prep and, write my notes out, for example. And then, I would 3, 2, 1, and I would look at my webcam and I would talk for however long it would take me to answer the prompt. Again, just like Toni, I kind of changed the timings as I was going because we weren't aware of how much time we had to answer the question. And then I would watch the video back. And the first time I watched it, I did look at myself in the screen. So I was like, no, we're not going to do that anymore. So then I started to look up at my webcam. And then, you know, a lot of the times I would realize that I was playing with my hair because I do that when I get nervous. And I was saying and so and like. So I took that out. And slowly I was able to wean out the little filler words that I had, and I was able to adjust my hand movements and where I was looking, and I was able to kind of create an environment that I was comfortable with. And so then when I was in the interview and I was seeing myself, it wasn't like a shock. So that's what I always tell pre-PAs and individuals who are prepping for the interview is always film yourself, get used to hearing the sound of your voice out loud, because it's weird to do the interview virtually. It's weird to not be in front of another individual who can nod their head at you and kind of give you that affirmation that you're on the right track. When you're just looking yourself in the webcam, you're like, am I even on the right track? And sometimes, I don't know if this happened to anyone else, but I would watch myself and I would like hear the sound of my voice and then I would lose my train of thought just because I saw myself. So I always tell PAs, film yourself, watch yourself, get used to hearing your voice, because it will shock you in the interview if you don't. So biggest advice, do the research, take your time on that, make sure you have a structure, and then film yourself, get your friends to give you that feedback, so then it's not like a huge shock when you have this weird virtual interview.
It's also like really important just to note that we all prepare very differently. Like the way that Shada prepared might be different from the way that I prepared, but at the end of the day, when you're going about to prepare, you really just want to prepare in a way that'll make you feel confident. You want to walk into the interview and feel confident about yourself, feel confident about your answers. I won't lie to you, when the interview was done, I cried because I thought it went horrible, but that's just how it goes. But when I walked in, I was really confident. But then when I finished, I had a second to process it, and I was like, maybe that didn't go the way I thought. But what I want to stress is you want to prep in a way that's going to make you feel confident going in. You can't control what's going to happen once it happens. You just want to do your best. And that's also why I really liked prepping in front of people, FaceTiming them, or just my family when I was with them, because I'm very cognizant of, you know, the way that I react with people. So that kind of like snapped me into like, you know, have that good posture, have the good eye contact. That's really what shaped me. But Shada watched herself back. That mortified me. I don't even know if I could watch it. But that's the thing. The prep is different depending on the individual. So it really just depends. And also, if you don't feel comfortable with someone, or you do feel comfortable with someone, ask for their feedback. If someone watches you do this interview, ask for their feedback, and get feedback from a wide variety of individuals. Don't just ask PAs on Instagram, can you help me with the MMI? You know, I asked friends who were in graphics design school. I asked one of my friends that was prepping for the MMI for vet school. I asked some of my friends that had no science background and friends that had medical background. I had some friends that had done the MMI, but for MD programs, and were helping me prep. So just get a vast, if you're comfortable, get a vast array of opinions, because I found that the more that I did it with different people, the more I really got to think about things from a different perspective. And that really helped the whole aspect of balancing different sides. And then I also got to practice solidifying, okay, what is my personal view? Where do I actually stand? And that's really important. They're not looking for a specific answer. They really don't have an answer key. They're looking at the individual, how you present yourself, how you present your answer, and really do they look at this individual and say, okay, yes, I want this person to be able to provide patient care as a PA. And that's really what they're just looking at. So however you feel will help you prepare for the interview in that way. You do the way that you want to do it.